Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going way beyond like your typical house,
Oh, okay.
We're going to be checking out floating homes, specifically this company Arktide.
Interesting.
They're not just building houses that are like on the water. They're trying to build entire communities.
Wow.
Sustainable floating communities.
That's ambitious.
Yeah, can you imagine just living like off the grid? Surrounded by water, minimal impact on the environment.
Sounds idyllic, yeah.
That's their whole vision with these Coquina model homes that they make. We're going to be kind of breaking down all the details from their website.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how it's not just the like, wow, live on the water thing.
Right.
It's really like a whole different way to think about like how we live.
Exactly. Our relationship with the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's start with their vision. So their website, the About page, they talk about wanting to build floating communities, like even cities that let both humans and nature thrive at the same time. So they're not just, another developer. They're really trying to create a new way of life.
Yeah, and I read that the CEO is Ben Saloni.
Oh, okay.
And his background is super interesting. He's done like real estate and project management and even humanitarian work.
Yeah.
And anti-piracy stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel like, all those different experiences like play into how Arktide really cares about, the environment and
that makes sense.
Social responsibility.
Okay. So it's not just a business for these people. They're, trying to do something more. So how does that all like work its way into the Coquina homes themselves? I mean, they say they're this blend of like high tech, but also like natural beauty. Yeah. But what does that actually mean for the people who would live there?
So think of it like this. The Coquina model is designed to be off-grid. So you don't have to depend on typical utilities. Like for power, they have solar panels and backup batteries. And for fresh water, they collect rainwater. And they can even like make fresh water from seawater.
Oh, wow.
And they treat the wastewater right there, too.
So you wouldn't have to deal with like crazy electric bills or even connecting to a city water system.
Exactly.
That's pretty appealing if you want to live off the grid.
Yeah.
But I got to ask about these incinerating toilets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they sound kind of intense.
I know, right?
What's that all about?
Well, you don't flush them like a regular toilet. It actually burns the waste at a really high temperature. And, all that's left is ash.
Wow.
So there's no need for a sewer hookup.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which, could be a big problem when you're on the water.
So they've got, power, water, waste all covered.
Right.
But what about the materials they use to actually build these homes?
Yeah.
Are those eco-friendly too?
Yeah, they use high-strength concrete. Right. And these things called geopolymers, which are really tough. And they don't get messed up by salt water or too much sun. And
so they're like weather resistant.
Yeah. Plus, the geopolymers are even better for the environment than regular concrete.
Oh.
So they don't release as much carbon dioxide when they're made.
Yeah.
And they can even use recycled stuff in them.
So these homes are like built to last and they're good for the planet.
Exactly.
That's awesome. It all sounds very high tech, though. Does that mean you have to be like some kind of tech person to live in one?
That's what's really interesting. While the technology is a big part of it,
right?
The idea is to make it easy to live sustainably. So, picture this. You wake up and step out onto your deck, and you can just dive right into the water for a swim.
Oh, wow.
You could kayak, go fishing.
I like it.
Just relax with a book while the sun sets over the water.
Okay, now you're talking.
Right.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Off-grid, living with like the beauty of, being on the water. But let's be real for a second.
Yeah.
Don't these things cost a fortune?
That's a good question. It's actually
going there for like super rich people.
More affordable than you'd think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They have a few pre-designed models, like a studio, a one-bedroom, and a two-bedroom, and the prices start at $100,000.
Wow, that's way less than I thought.
Yeah.
But what if you want to like customize it?
You absolutely can.
Can you make it, really yours?
Yeah, that's the cool part.
Yeah, cool.
You can change the design inside and out, pick the size of your kitchen and bathrooms. If you want a bigger deck or even like a built-in fishing rod holder, you can do that.
Wow.
You can even add motors to it so you can move it around.
So you're not just like buying some cookie cutter house. You can like tailor it to how you want to live.
Yeah, it's like designing your own little paradise on the water.
I'm starting to get why people are so into this.
Yeah, it's freedom, it's comfy, and it's beautiful.
Okay, so we have a good idea of their vision and like the basic Coquina model, but I'm kind of wondering, like, how does it actually work?
Right.
What about, doing laundry or cooking?
Well, that's what we'll get into next. We'll look at how these homes can actually function off the grid.
Awesome.
And what makes them sustainable.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, great. So let's really picture yourself living in one of these Coquinas, right?
Okay.
Going through your day, you get up, you make some coffee, maybe take a shower, all the normal stuff you do at home.
Right.
But think about all the stuff that goes into that.
Yeah.
The electricity, the water, what happens to the waste.
Yeah.
The Coquina is designed to deal with all that stuff sustainably. Right there on the house.
Okay. So how does it actually work? Let's start with power. I mean, we know they have solar panels, but are those really enough to power like a whole house? What about if it's cloudy?
Yeah.
Or running appliances like, a washing machine or something?
That's a big thing with solar power.
Yeah.
It's not always reliable. So Arktide put backup batteries in the system.
Okay.
They store up extra energy when it's sunny.
I see.
So you have power even when it's like cloudy or whatever.
So it's like your own little mini tower plant?
Kind of, yeah.
That's pretty cool. But what about water? I mean, they collect rainwater, but is that going to be enough?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Especially in places where it doesn't rain much.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have a backup for that too. Desalination.
Desalination, like making fresh water from the ocean.
Exactly. They can turn seawater into fresh water, like right there on the Coquina.
Wow.
So no matter what the weather's like or where you are, you've got fresh water.
They really thought this through.
They did.
What about those incinerating toilets? We talked about those a little earlier.
Oh, yeah.
How do those things even work?
Okay, picture this. Instead of, flushing your waste into a sewer system like normal,
Right.
This toilet uses heat, super high heat, to basically vaporize the waste.
Wow.
All that's left is a little bit of ash.
So it's like a tiny incinerator?
Basically, yeah.
That sounds super efficient, but is it safe?
Yeah.
What about the emissions?
I mean, obviously that's a concern.
Yeah.
But it's designed to be safe and, to stay within environmental guidelines.
Okay.
So the emissions are minimal.
So I guess it's a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah.
You get a system that's really self-contained.
Right.
You don't need to be hooked up to all that extra infrastructure.
Yeah.
But it's not, a perfect system.
Exactly. There are always going to be pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
But you have to give them credit for really trying to push the boundaries of what's possible with sustainability.
And they don't seem to be cutting any corners on those building materials either.
Right.
Like that high-strength concrete and the geopolymers.
Yeah. Those materials are seriously tough. They can take on, salt water, wind, tons of sun. These homes are meant to last.
Like, for how long are we talking here?
Arktide says over 100 years.
Wow.
It's not just about being environmentally friendly at the beginning, It's about making sure the homes last a long time.
So they need less maintenance, right?
Exactly.
Less replacing and repairing.
Which just means they're even better for the environment.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about all the technical stuff.
Right.
We got to talk about the actual lifestyle.
Yeah.
Living in one of these things.
Right.
The website makes it sound pretty amazing.
Yes.
What kind of things could people do if they lived in a Coquina?
Well, first of all, imagine waking up to the sound of water.
Oh, yeah.
Right outside your window. You step out onto your deck, and you're right there in nature.
That's the dream.
You can take a kayak out, go fishing right off your deck, or just chill out with a book and watch the sunset.
Okay, I'm in. Where do I sign up?
Right. But we do have to talk about, the real world stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Like, how do you go grocery shopping?
Right.
Or get to work? What if there's a storm?
What about those things?
I mean, living on the water takes some adjusting, right?
Yeah.
You might have to get used to traveling by boat or using water taxis.
Okay.
And, just like with any coastal home, you'd have to be ready for storms.
Makes sense.
And some things, like getting services, might just take a little more planning.
So it's not all just like romantic sunset.
Not exactly. No.
Yeah.
But, for some people, those challenges are worth it.
Right.
They want that slower pace of life.
Yeah.
Being closer to nature. Being more self-sufficient.
That's appealing to a lot of people these days.
Definitely.
We're kind of moving away from that hustle culture, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of community, though, Arktide says they want to do more than just individual homes. We're talking about, like, whole floating neighborhoods.
I know.
Even cities.
That's a big goal.
Is that even possible?
It's definitely ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
But think about it.
Yeah.
We already have platforms for oil rigs and, like, offshore wind farms.
Right.
Even floating airports.
That's true.
So the technology is there.
So it's not really a question of if we can do it.
Yeah.
It's more like, how do we do it right?
Exactly. Can we make these communities that work for people?
And then they're sustainable, too.
Right. That's the challenge. Not just building houses on water, but making real communities with all the stuff they need.
Yeah, that's a big difference. But it's exciting to think about.
Yeah.
Especially with rising sea levels and everything.
Definitely. I mean, we need solutions, and Arktide might be onto something.
It's not just about housing. It's about changing how we think about living with the environment.
That's exactly it. Arktide is trying to figure out how we can live with nature, not against it.
Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this.
Yeah.
And they're totally hooked on this whole floating home idea.
Okay.
Where should they even start?
Well, the first step is to learn more.
Okay.
The Arktide website is a good place, of course, but there are also like online groups and forums
Oh, cool.
where people who actually live in floating homes share their experiences.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you should definitely visit a floating home community if you can.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Seeing it in person can really help you picture what it's like to actually live there.
So it's all about doing your research,
Yeah.
figuring out the good and the bad,
Yeah.
and then deciding if this kind of lifestyle is right for you.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely intrigued.
Me too.
It's pretty wild to think about how this could go even bigger than just, single homes.
Oh, yeah.
Arktide's talking about whole floating communities, right? Even cities.
I know. It's a big idea.
What would that even look like? And how would it change, how we live with the environment?
Okay, so picture this. You have these platforms all connected,
Okay.
almost like floating neighborhoods, right?
Yep.
With homes and shops and parks.
Wow.
Maybe even like schools and community centers all built right in. It's totally different from how we plan cities now.
It's like a city on the water.
Exactly.
But how would it work?
Yeah.
Would everything be self-sufficient, or would you still need stuff from land?
That's the big question. Probably a bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
they could try to be super self-sufficient, especially with power and water.
Right.
Think giant solar panels, rainwater collection, maybe even using the power of the waves for energy.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. But realistically, they would probably still need some things from land, at least at first.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like a mix, right?
Yeah.
The freedom of being off-grid, but with some of the conveniences we're used to.
Exactly. The best of both worlds.
What about the people, though, and the environment? I mean, what would floating cities mean for all that?
Lots to think about there.
Yeah.
On the social side, I think it could bring people closer together.
Oh, okay.
Living closer, sharing resources,
Yeah,
you know.
like a tight-knit community.
Exactly. Plus, it could create new jobs, especially in places where there's not much land.
Right, on the coast.
Yeah, think like farming seafood, marine research, ecotourism,
Wow.
even new ways to get around.
So it's not just about homes. It's like a whole new way of life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
It's about making these ecosystems that can actually sustain themselves.
That's pretty amazing. But what about the environment? Would these cities be good or bad for the ocean?
That's the big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's done right, I think they could actually HLP the ocean.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine platforms designed to encourage marine life with artificial reefs and stuff like that.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Right. And we've talked about how the Coquina homes focus on reducing waste
Mm-hmm.
and using sustainable materials.
Yep.
Well, you could do that on a much bigger scale with floating cities.
So it's not just about not hurting the environment. It's about actually helping it get better.
Exactly.
I have to ask, though, is this all just a dream for the future?
Yeah.
Or is this something we might actually see happen?
It's a big goal, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's impossible.
Okay.
More and more people are interested in floating architecture and living sustainably.
Yeah, that's true.
Plus, technology is getting better all the time.
Yeah.
And with climate change and more people on the planet, we're going to need creative solutions like this.
It's exciting, but it's also kind of scary to think about all the changes that could come with it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It feels like we're at a turning point in how we think about cities and the environment.
So for someone listening right now who's totally fascinated by this idea of a Coquina home or even a floating city, what should they do?
Keep that curiosity going. Do your research, explore all the possibilities, and find other people who are interested in the same things.
Yeah, connect with that community.
Exactly. Visit floating homes, go to conferences, heck, even start designing your own.
That's a great idea.
The future is literally floating out there, and we get to be part of creating it.
I love that. So whether you're dreaming of your own little escape on the water or a whole bustling floating city, just remember, it all starts with imagination. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to push the limits.
Yeah, and hey, maybe one day we'll all be neighbors in a floating community sharing stories and watching the sunset together.
That's a future I want to be a part of. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of floating homes and everything they could be.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious and keep your imaginations afloat.